Tonight, we're going to talk about how to deal with setting boundaries when it comes to someone who is manipulative. Week 1 was identifying what was depleting you. Week 2 was your communication style. And week 3, which is tonight, is all about manipulators and how to set boundaries without escalation. First of all, I'd like to talk about some of the characteristics of a manipulator. First and foremost, they are needy. They often present as in pain, feeling abandoned or mistreated. So for whoever is working in a medical office where manipulative personality shows up, that is often the hook. Someone comes to you who has a desperate medical situation. They have been abandoned by their previous physician or mistreated in some way, and they have a rather pathetic story often that can sometimes get rather convoluted, that really pulls on your heartstrings. Secondly, they create confusion. Often their stories have conflicting themes. They seem to change goals or change their motives midstream, and you can feel confused by that. If you are someone who is not very adept at dealing with someone who's manipulative, you can waste a lot of time trying to get clear. I would advise that you not do that, because trying to get clear when you are in a very murky, confusing storyline never really works. The story just becomes more convoluted and complex. So the very best strategy is to notice, first and foremost, that someone needy with a painful story filled with abandonment and mistreatment shows up. You're not sure yet whether to believe the story or not, because of course there are sometimes very worthy individuals who show up with sad stories. But when the confusion begins, I would recommend that you just observe. Don't try and do any deep investigation at this point, just observe. Next, when you notice inconsistencies, when the story changes, when the details don't make sense, start to just keep a list of what those inconsistencies are, either in your mind or actually jot them down, because this will be helpful later. Finally, a manipulator often is overly appreciative, and this can verge on flirtatiousness. Oh my goodness, what would I do without you, doctor? You are so amazing. Oh, you are the receptionist from heaven. You are an angel. No one else has ever treated me as well as you have. This can be somewhat heady. It can sometimes also be unclear whether this appreciation is genuine or sort of concocted. So just notice again. Notice any ego massaging, flirtatiousness, or attempt to engage you in your savior complex. Because most of us have somewhere deep inside this desire to help, to save lives, especially physicians who that's part of your Hippocratic oath. So notice someone who's overly appreciative. Don't necessarily make a judgment at the beginning, but take it under advisement. A manipulator often has hidden agendas and ulterior motives. And that's when you begin to recognize that what they're asking for and the reason they're asking for it often doesn't make sense. So for instance, you're treating someone who you have successfully helped with pain. They had a back that was painful for a long time. You have helped them through your treatment plan. they're doing so much better, and yet they come and ask for a refill on their medication. So then you're trying to figure out, is this someone who you have to be concerned about that's going to be selling drugs on the street? Or is this someone who's just highly anxious and needs to have a supply of pain medication on hand in case it should rear its head again and you're not available to help them? And so these hidden agendas and ulterior motives can be confusing. So notice when what is being said and what seems to be the need is incongruent. Often manipulators control through guilt. They can be harsh, moving from appreciation and just singing your praises to sort of a black and white, now you're horrible, you're mean, you're not helping, how can you be so cruel? They often distort and sometimes lie. They're afraid that they're not going to get what they need, and so they're willing to do almost anything to get it. They often leave you feeling uneasy, sometimes even awful, but you just have this uneasy feeling. Something doesn't seem right. Now, I want to encourage you not to objectify your manipulative patient or office worker. They are who they are because of their background. And I strongly believe that whether someone is personality disordered or has PTSD or some other mental health issue, it is not helpful to objectify them and sort of project onto them monstrous motivations. People who are manipulative started with their needs not being met. This often happened with intermittent reinforcement. Intermittent reinforcement can be crazy making. And I'm going to give you an example by sort of sharing a little story about a kiddo we will call Craig. So Craig has a mother who has laid down the rule in their household that there is no snacking between meals. One day, Craig is going through a growth spurt, and he goes running into the house after playing outside at about 10:30 in the morning and says, Mom, I'm starving. I'm just starving. Can I please have an apple? And Mom turns and angrily says, you know we have a rule that there is no snacking in our household. So you may absolutely not have an apple. You go back outside and play. Craig whines a little bit and tries to cajole her and get her to change her mind, and she is absolutely adamant. The following day, they have visitors over. Mom has a friend over who also has a child. The kids are outside playing. About 10:30 in the morning, Mom opens the sliding glass door and says, children, do you want to come in for a snack? And little Craig comes running up and says, but Mom, we have a rule in our house. We don't eat between meals. And she says, now you're being rude. Don't you be rude. We have guests. We're all going to have a snack. So Craig comes in, sits down, and has a snack. The following day, he decides that maybe it's okay to have a snack after all. So he comes into the kitchen, feeling pretty safe and secure, goes over to the counter, grabs a banana, peels it, and starts to eat. Mom walks into the kitchen. You are such a naughty boy. How could you do this? You know what the rule is. She grabs the banana, throws it in the garbage, and tells him he won't have lunch. He runs to his bedroom, crying hysterically, ends up getting into a rage and destroying some of his toys. Mom is totally unmovable. A couple days later, they happen to be downtown. They're in the mall. It's mid-morning. Mom turns to Craig and says, hey, should we go to Orange Julius and have a drink? By this time, Craig is totally confused. He does not know what the rules really are. He only knows that whether he is hungry or not, mom's the one in control, and he just has to try and figure out what the rules of the day are. This is a really good classic example of intermittent reinforcement, a parenting style that is so inconsistent and can be so harsh and rewarding at the same time that children are so confused. They learn that the only way to get their needs met are to manipulate. And they don't even see it in those terms. They are just trying to survive. Another experience that sometimes creates a manipulator is someone who has both been indulged at times and experienced withholding at others. So that's a child who may be given a fancy car on their 16th birthday, but then when it comes to needed supplies for school and for some project they're working on in science, dad is absolutely adamant that you must work for your way. And if you're going to do this science project, you need to find a way to get your own supplies. So it's crazy making. Dad gets me this fancy car, which I don't really necessarily need or didn't even ask for. On the other hand, when I'm asking for science supplies to do a project, that is withheld. Why is this, and what are the rules really? These types of situations create feelings of desperation. These children feel powerless. They are constantly looking for some kind of way to figure out and make sense of their world, and they try desperately to exert some control. They need consistent boundaries and rules so that life can be logical, so it can make sense. So I'm spending some extra time on this slide because I want to make sure that everyone listening, either tonight or in the future, has a sense that manipulators are made, they are not born, and that there's a really logical explanation for why they are the way they are. And if we can understand that and have some compassion, we're less likely to objectify them and treat them in a way that is unkind or perpetuates the pain that they have experienced in life. So we talked about them trying to find a way to exert control, to try and control your behavior in the relationship. And so in an emotionally controlling relationship, there are two tactics that are often used that become habituated patterns. That's manipulation and intimidation. Manipulation is just trying to find your weakness in order to influence you to get what they most need. Intimidation is taking it to the next level, where a manipulator tries to use power, control, bullying, threatening behaviors in order to get what they want. They may not necessarily be a violent or evil person, but they're just trying to use tactics that have worked for them in the past to control your behavior in the relationship in order to get what they most need. So what should you watch for? Watch for manipulation that comes across in sort of a lighthearted, humorous, or sarcastic way. That is the patient who says something that is rather unflattering or even mean-spirited, but they laugh when they do it. Their countenance doesn't match the words that they're using. That's often a signal that this is someone who is going to use manipulative tactics. They use flattery or solicitous language to engage you. telling you how wonderful you are, going to great lengths, sometimes even bringing you gifts if there's someone with money, offering you something that they think you might want, like a board position, if there's someone with power, um, to, through word of mouth, get you more patients. Just notice, sometimes we can have someone come into our practice who's funny and sarcastic and who is overly appreciative, and they're just, salt of the earth type of people who would do anything for you. Other times, those are really red flags warning you that something might be wrong here. And so stay alert and engage so that you can notice which it is. There are people who avoid direct communication. They often don't answer your direct questions and deflect it or change the subject. When they have done something that contributes to failing health or not having adequate insurance coverage, they haven't done what you ask them to do, they find a way to make it your fault, not their own. So they're very good at blaming. They tend to lie or distort because they're afraid of getting into trouble or making you mad. And so they're willing to do just about anything or say just about anything to stay in your good graces, because that's a way of getting what they want and need. Incongruency, where what they say doesn't match their demeanor, is something to watch for. If they're being really mean-spirited and they're smiling, if they're crying and acting hysterical, but there are no tears. Pay attention to this. These are characteristics that you are watching for. This is not the time to intervene. This is just the time to identify whether the person in front of you is really someone who is suffering on a scale of 1 to 10 with pain at a 10 level, and they're sincere and they just are giving you mixed signals because they're in so much pain, or whether this is really someone who isn't in much pain at all, but just feels lonely and abandoned in the world and is trying to engage you in taking care of them. They can be demanding and entitled, so really warn office staff. This can also be true of people in the training programs who are supervisors or attendings. And so if you notice these characteristics, it's really important to keep yourself safe by identifying this could be a manipulative person. They're needy and desperate, and they can be threatening. There are some responses that you can have, though. This is the good news, that allows you to have control and allows you to work with this person in confidence. So the number one thing is to be consistent. As I was sharing in an earlier slide, these are people who did not experience consistency in their childhoods. And so when we interact with them, the biggest gift we can give is be consistent. Your rules should never change. You need to mean what you say and be unwavering, but not rigid. So an example of this is you may have identified a patient as someone who you think is manipulative. You aren't certain yet, but you're pretty sure. They end up coming to their appointment late. You have made it very clear with them that the rules are they show up on time, that there are consequences if they're late for an appointment, they'll need to reschedule, or if they are a no-show, you only allow, say, no-show appointments twice before they're discharged from your practice. So if you're really clear with that from the beginning, and you end up with someone who shows up late, and they're quite despairing, they have a sad story about why they're so late, I would encourage you to the first time, in the spirit of being consistent, to perhaps loosen, don't be too rigid, but loosen your boundaries just a wee bit by saying, well, it seems like there are extenuating circumstances. I see that you're upset. I'm recognizing that you're late. We're not going to be able to have the full time together. However, I'm willing to meet you halfway, even though the rule is that you can't be late. Today, we're just going to meet for the 10 minutes left in your appointment time, and I will try and help you the best that I can. So that way, you're not rigid, you're not being punitive, but you're still reminding them that the rules are you're not late or you're not a no-show. Now, if the next appointment, there's again another drama and a reason why they can't be there or they don't show altogether, then you absolutely have to engage your rules, implement them, and be absolutely unwavering. You don't have to be mean-spirited or rigid, but absolutely firm. Use natural consequences, explaining that the natural consequence of not showing for an appointment is that there is a $50 fee. This is something that is only fair to you because you've blocked out that time, and to other patients who may need to see you who aren't able to get in when an appointment time is reserved and yet someone doesn't show. You explain, you reinforce, you support them by letting them know that you absolutely believe this is not going to be an issue for them. You're just going over your policies on their first appointment to let them know what the expectations are. So you're supportive, you're positive, you know they're going to show up on time. And then if and when they don't, you are just firm and flat. You explain again, oh, I'm so sorry you didn't make it today. I know life happens. That's so unfortunate. You can leave your $50 with the receptionist or mail it in. I really look forward to seeing you again soon. So let me see what time is available so that we can reschedule. You are confident, you are consistent, you are implementing natural consequences, and that will actually help a manipulative person feel safer. They may test you, they may push the limits just to make sure that they understand what the positive and negative reinforcement is in your office, but in the long run, they will begin to accommodate and meet you where you're at. It's important to communicate your expectations. So with someone who's manipulative, to summarize what you heard them saying, what the need is, that you absolutely heard it, being clear and direct, in avoiding all the ways in which they communicate where there's confusion and distortion and incongruency. You are summarizing, you are clear and direct, and then incentivize them by following the summary and the clear and direct instructions with how happy you are to work with them, how you know they're as committed as you are, that you know that they're going to start getting better soon. If this is an employee, to summarize your relationship, what the expectations are, being clear and direct, and then incentivizing them by saying what a wonderful experience is going to be for everyone working on a team and as a team, and that there are rewards and bonuses for those that show up in a way that really supports the team. The second response to have with manipulators is to ask and solve. Ask probing questions. This is once you really have, beyond a shadow of a doubt, identified that this is a manipulator. You want to really try to get to the source, searching for details to figure out what's really going on. So when they are sharing a story that has lots of incongruencies, You're no longer just observing their behaviors in order to become clear, but you now are clear that this is a manipulative person. Then you start to highlight the areas that don't seem to be congruent. You don't do this in a shaming way. You just continue to reassure them that you're trying to get to the source of what the problem is. You really want to be clear about the details so that you're all on the same page. You just really want to identify the underlying need. And that's a phrase I would use, the underlying need. What you're really trying to do is identify the truth. But saying that you're wanting to identify the underlying need really helps someone feel as if you have their best interest at heart. That for people who are manipulative and who sort of get found out, they can feel ashamed. They can feel very alone in this, because if it's at the level of a personality disorder, they're having a difficult time maneuvering this life in a way that feels effortless. For them, it is efforting every single day, efforting to try and get their needs met. And so they're used to living with extreme neediness, feeling abandoned, misunderstood, feeling confused, not getting the rules. So if you can ask those probing questions, getting to the source, searching for the details, summarizing every step as you go, letting them know that the only reason you're asking these questions is because you really want to be on the same page so that you've both identified the underlying need. And this works with a superior, this works with a patient, this works with a loved one, really engaging the asking part of this. When you are ready to move to solutions, you want to start with summarizing the true need, the underlying need that you identified through the probing questions. So you summarize the truth, what you discovered. Then you ask them to help you identify what they've tried before. That helps them to feel like they're a part of this. It empowers them, but it doesn't give them the reins. They're not in control. You're just allowing them to collaborate. So you ask them what they've tried. You keep going back and summarizing over and over again. So this is what we've discovered. This is what you've tried. We're both on the same page. We're going to collaborate on the solutions. And then once you've come up with some possible solutions that you've both agreed to, then you really want to revisit the natural consequences, keeping it positive if at all possible. So what we understand here is that you continue to have, let's say, neuropathy. And so all the tearfulness, the depression, sort of the drama that I've been experiencing when we've been talking the last couple of appointments is because you are so uncomfortable with this neuropathy. So we understand that that's what's making you depressed and emotionally fragile. You've told me this and this and this is what you've tried. And now here are some of the solutions that we've agreed to try together. And then once you've summarized that, to say, and I'm confident that one of the solutions that we've just identified is going to work. We're doing it differently. I'm listening to you. I'm taking this very seriously. You're being clear and direct, and you're always wanting to end with what your expectations are, not in a too dominating way, but just again with that sort of firm and flat tone. So, in order for us to get these natural consequences, to get these natural results, I really need you to do the exercise program. I need you to meet with the physical therapist, and I absolutely want to make sure that you're going to take the medication just as I've told you today, right? And so, you're very clear with them, and in that situation, they feel much safer. If you go into an appointment with someone who's manipulative, who's all over the place, who seems to be jerking you around, it can be extremely frustrating. It's a total time suck. And you can end up feeling as if you've been used and sort of disheartened that you have any trust that anything is going to really happen. And it can really escalate because these people can then end up feeling unsafe, as they always do in life, but you've not really provided sort of a safe container in your office visit, in your office or professional relationship with them. And if this is somebody at home, your personal relationship. And so when they're clear and when you're consistent, they feel safer. When they are sort of in control of the situation, even though on the surface it can feel very briefly that they have control, they still deteriorate into hopelessness, more sort of distortion of what the true facts are, and it can be really scary for them and frustrating for you. Response number 3 is to create boundaries. Maintain your confidence. Live by the rules yourself. Don't feel sorry for them, but instead express hope. And I know this can be hard when you end up getting into a situation where there really is legitimate need, where you really are experiencing someone who perhaps is in an impoverished situation. Their life circumstances are scary or unhealthy. They seem to be trying the best that they can, and yet you feel their desperation. So it can be easy to start to feel sorry for them. That doesn't help. What really helps is for you to be confident, for you to stand by the container and structure of the container, which is the relationship you have, for you to express hope, to redirect their flattery. So when somebody comes to you and says, oh, you are just the best nurse practitioner ever. I've never known anybody who has been as compassionate and loving as you are. You have saved my life. That is a time where you can redirect them by expressing how gratifying it is to see someone who's committed to their own healing and recovery. Redirect the conversation rather than absorbing that false flattery, because then if you sort of accept it, you're likely to create a habituated pattern where they put you in a dominant position as someone with all the power, and they're trying to manipulate you to get what they need. And that doesn't help. So redirect the flattery to really acknowledging their part in their healing, their part in your office, and how they contribute to the team. If it's someone in your personal life, how they are a part of whatever positive is going on. Don't succumb to the confusion. Sometimes it's easy to just get sucked into all the dramatic tales. Be reassuring, continuing to reassure that together we're going to find a solution. Be consistent, as I said, firm and flat. Avoid reacting. When you notice you're having a reaction, excuse yourself. Try and give yourself time and space for your reaction, and then return in a way that is responsive, not reactive. Reactivity only escalates a manipulator. Responding helps to calm them down, helps them to feel reassured that you are going to really help them find a solution. And finally, trust the process. If you are committed to having a boundaried relationship at home or at work, if you are very clear about what the natural consequences are, what your expectations are, you will end up, and if you are, probing appropriately and helping to come up with solutions, this can be a relationship that works. If we tried to eliminate all the manipulative people in our lives from our work or home environments, it would be a very different world. I mean, I think, there are extremes. If you have someone who is an extreme sociopathic, pathological liar who wants to be a part of your practice and they create chaos and an unsafe environment, then that's someone to fire from the practice, letting them know that you just don't feel this is a fit and that your number one concern is keeping everyone safe, and you don't feel that you can adequately do that for them. And just being firm and flat early on, not allowing the relationship to deepen to the point where it's really hard to get out of the situation. So that's why I'm hoping this third week is helpful to you, because if you can begin to notice your internal response early on, observing the behaviors that you see, keeping track of it, noticing how many things on the list of manipulative behaviors is showing up, and then engaging a structure to try and create a healthy, healing relationship with this person. You can often have a long-term relationship with someone who has some personality issues. If, on the other hand, you ignore all the early signals and you just sort of move into the arena where angels fear to tread, then you can end up in a situation that escalates. Finally, I want to remind you that you come first. I really, really want you to hear this. You come first. You need to ask yourself what you need and what you want from this relationship. So if we're talking about a patient relationship and you are just wanting to have as many healthy patient relationships as possible, but you notice that there's a small smattering of highly dysfunctional or manipulative people in your practice, and hopefully that's under 5%, more like 3 to 1%. Your answer to what do I need and want might be, I want to provide healing to anyone, including those who have a difficult time and who perhaps have had an emotionally or physically abusive childhood or an inconsistent intermittent reinforcement childhood. I want to be there for everyone. So I think that as long as you're clear about what your motivations are, what you need and want from the relationship. Now, if your answer is, I don't want to go bankrupt and I don't have enough people to fill my practice, so I need to take these losers that keep showing up, that's a danger signal. That says to me that you really need to discharge some of the people that have shown up, because what you need and want is not to have those people in your practice. You just feel desperate. And desperation is not the right motivation to build a practice. If this is happening at home and you are with a partner or spouse who is manipulative and you are dependent on them for financially, or you're dependent on them in some other way, and that's what you need and want, and that's why you're deciding to stay, that is not a good and healthy reason. It is not really putting yourself first. In fact, it's reinforcing your lack of belief in yourself. So asking yourself what you need, what you want to see happen from this relationship are key questions, and then pay attention to the answer. Thirdly, ask yourself if you're enmeshed. Enmeshment sort of the definition is dysfunctional interactions. You want more for the patient or for the loved one than they want for themselves. And you notice dependency or a feeling of being responsible. And that can be either your dependency on them or their dependency on you. Enmesh situations at home often look like isolation. We just don't have time to socialize much. We're both sort of introverted, and so we keep to ourselves. Yes, I know that I have an anger problem and I blow up and I feel really bad about what I say and what I do at home. But I'm absolutely dependent. I'm responsible. If I changed or got healthy, I would end up abandoning my spouse or abandoning my children. So there's a lot of this justification of staying in an isolated and enmeshed situation in order to keep the status quo. Because even though the interactions are dysfunctional, even though you want more for the other people in the relationship than you can want for yourself, and you are willing to continue to sort of fuel a codependency, you justify staying in the relationship. And as long as you do that, you are going to be subject to the whims of someone who is manipulative, because now they really have you. You can be called out on all of these things, and they can use their intimidation tactics to try and keep you in that enmeshed situation. So a classic case personally is where perhaps a spouse is disabled, you're the wage earner, they could do more than they do, but they don't because they're dependent on you. You in turn feel guilty about how much you work and how much time you're away. You're resentful, and so your interactions are sometimes short. And so you stay in the situation because you don't want to abandon, because your spouse could not make it without you. You feel guilty. And, sometimes there are escalating fights and conflicts. So you stay in this enmeshed situation out of guilt and out of codependency. When that is what's happening in your personal life, it's hard to show up at work and be your highest self, to really feel joy, to really be able to have healthy boundaries in the workplace. And if you are someone who are out to save the world and believe that you're the only one that can do it, and so you foster codependent relationships with your patient, you can end up creating enmeshment at work, or even enmeshment with your office staff, where people are over disclosing some of their personal problems. We start to resent the fact that this staff member never comes on time, is always late, doesn't carry their weight, that they have this horrible situation at home. We start to feel resentment, but we're also feel a certain level of dependency on them because they're the one who knows how to schedule people or how to do one of the office procedures. So it becomes really convoluted and enmeshed, and that is something that quickly tells you you don't have healthy boundaries. So you come first. If you're enmeshed, it's time to start creating a plan to release those dysfunctional patterns and adopt new, healthy, functional patterns. So if anything that I've described here, either in your work situation at home or in your training situation, seems to feel like enmeshment, when we have our session, let's talk about it. Or you can email me this week and we can talk about it. Then finally, number 4, you need to ask, what's in this for me? That's a little different than what do I need and what do I want. This is about reciprocity. If you are giving, what are you getting in return? It's really, really important that is a two-way street. And then finally, it is okay to take a break. Avoid the other person's sense of urgency. So if you find yourself in a situation that has a manipulative character as a player, it's okay to say, we processed a lot in this appointment today. I have a lot to figure out, a lot to sit with and try and come up with some creative solutions. So I'm going to take a break today. We're going to end our appointment today, and we'll make one again, and then you decide how long in the future. And so I want you to schedule your next appointment this time, and we'll regroup. Especially if you feel like you're being worn down and you might make a practice decision that you'll regret later, like filling a prescription that you've already said no, you would not, or not holding firm to some of the boundaries that you have in your office policies. So you come first, ask what you need, what you want, ask yourself if this is an enmeshed relationship, make sure there's reciprocity and that it's give and take, and then feel empowered to take a break. So finally, for week 3, the assignment, I would like each of you to make a list of the manipulators in your life, past and present. We all are on a growth curve. So some of the manipulation you may have experienced when you were in middle school or in college is very different than the manipulators that are in your life today. So if you could just make a list of the people that you can quickly identify as having been manipulators in your life, past and present. And then I want you to spend a few minutes identifying the patterns. What is similar and what's different? You may notice that the manipulators in your life are fewer and farther between, that you have innately just found ways to deal with them that is healthier and more functional. Or sometimes you find that your list of manipulators is increasing, that you can almost not identify a friend or family member or staff member that doesn't feel as if they don't have a pretty strong manipulative streak. And if that's the case, then I really would encourage you to do some work with me around that, because you deserve to be in healthy relationship. You deserve to be able to treat patients who truly appreciate you and who are truly collaborators with you in their health. You deserve to have friendships that are give and take, where you don't feel as if you're being used. And I want to encourage you that it's okay to begin moving towards healthier relationships personally and professionally. But sometimes making a list and actually seeing it in black and white, noticing how the patterns have become more entrenched, or the patterns that are less and less and less, can be encouraging or the very wake-up call you need. Third, I would like to ask you to be vulnerable and acknowledge a time in your life where you were manipulative or selfish. I know this is a little bit scary, but we all have shadows. We all have times where we aren't our highest and best. And I think sometimes, especially when I'm sitting with someone who is telling me that all their patients are manipulators, all their patients want is just, the drug, the simple answer, that nobody that they're seeing is honest, that they all lie, that often is a projection. And it may be that you struggle with some of that internalized manipulative energy that comes from a place of real pain, um, from a childhood where you did not receive what you needed. And so you struggle with getting your needs met without being manipulative or perceived as selfish. I want you to know you're safe to share that with me. I have shadows and warts and all, just like everyone listening. And so I only see us acknowledging our shadow, acknowledging our internalized saboteur or manipulator or selfish one as a huge step in beginning to embrace healing and health for ourselves, and often helps minimize and dilute that projection that we put onto others. Fourth, I'd like you this week to begin practice setting some of these boundaries we talked about, boundaries that have to do with what you have heard, what you expect, what the rules are, how you want the other person to show up and participate with you in your team or in embracing health or in your relationship. And then any problem areas that you notice, I would like you to either bring to class next week or email me. Next week, what I plan to do is have a question and answer period at the end of the call. So I'm announcing that this week so that those who may not always be available are able to join us if possible. And we can talk next week, week 4, about some of the commonalities, those shared areas where people are struggling, either in dealing with your depletion from the first week, or in communicating and cleaning up your ways of communicating with others and being assertive in your communication and helping others to be assertive with you as well, or in the area of working with people who are manipulative or who may have personality disorders or mental health issues that impede their ability to relate with you in a healthy way. So next week, we will have a question and answer period at the end of class, but you can also email me. Resources for this week, I've suggested 3 books. There's one that's called Surviving a Borderline Parent. And for those of you that don't know, I'm sure most of you do, but a borderline personality is someone who is highly reactive, who has difficulty staying in the center, and usually everything is all good or all bad. They think in terms of black and white, and there's very little gray. And because of their highly emotive and reactive personality, they go through life being very unstable and dysregulated. So Surviving a Borderline Parent, that's a very good book. Walking on Eggshells is also about living with personality disordered individuals. And then the last one is a book called I Hate You, Don't Leave Me, which I think we've all experienced someone at some point in our lives that's like, oh, I hate you. Often people who are possessive. We've all seen movies or read stories about someone who's like an abuser or a stalker, or someone who's very controlling, who is quick to say how much they hate and disdain you, while at the same time they are fearing abandonment and begging you not to leave. So I thought those could be 3 good resources for you if anything that I've said tonight really rings a bell and feels like it's congruent with your experience. I encourage all of you to do as many of the assignments this week as possible, because I think you'll find it highly gratifying